You actually convince yourself that ignoring that one glaring sign won't wreck your entire marriage. You see it there, faint as hell, but you pretend it's just a phase or a weird mood swing. She's just tired, you whisper to yourself, or, we're both busy, it's nothing. But brother, wake up. That subtle shift, the way her eyes don't quite meet yours anymore, the slight hold back in her words, the pauses that stretch just a bit too long, they're not nothing. They're the cracks forming beneath the surface, the first whispers of a storm you'll soon regret not preparing for. You watch her pull away in conversation, or maybe she's just not laughing like she used to. You shrug it off, telling yourself you're overthinking, that this is just the ebb and flow of a long relationship. But here's the kicker, these tiny distances, these small silences, are the silent assassins of intimacy. You ignore the sign because it doesn't scream, it doesn't slam doors or throw dishes. It creeps in, sneaky and quiet, and by the time you notice, it's already dug a trench between you two that's damn near impossible to cross. You want to believe everything's fine because facing the truth means discomfort, confrontation, and maybe even admitting you were wrong. So you tuck the feeling away, hoping it'll vanish if you don't stare it down. But denial is a luxury you can't afford in marriage. That subtle emotional detachment you're ignoring? It's a red flag wrapped in a whisper, and ignoring the sign is like walking blindfolded toward a cliff edge. You don't have to fall today, but your steps are reckless, and the fall is inevitable if you keep this up. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're sitting at the dinner table, the same one you've shared for years. She's scrolling on her phone, barely catching your eye, replies clipped and automatic. You say something about your day, and she nods, but the spark, the real connection, is gone. You tell yourself, she's just distracted, no big deal. But here's the ugly truth, that distraction is a symptom, not the problem itself. That's the sign you're ignoring. The emotional distance has started to take root, and if you don't call it out, if you don't demand more than a nod and a glance, that distance will widen until there's nothing left to hold on to. You might think, she's not different, this is just how she is now. Stop being the blind idiot. People don't change overnight without a reason, and when someone starts pulling back emotionally, it's because something inside them is shifting. Maybe they're hurt, maybe they're resentful, maybe they're just tired of being the only one trying. You don't get to choose ignorance here. Ignoring the sign isn't innocent. It's a choice, and it's one that's going to cost you. And it's not just the visible pullback that counts. Sometimes the sign is in what goes unsaid. Conversations that used to flow freely now feel like walking through thick mud, slow, exhausting, and pointless. You try to bring up the little things, but she shuts down or changes the subject. You tell yourself it's just stress or work, but the truth is, she's building walls you don't even see yet. Those walls are the fortress around the problem you refuse to face. Ignoring the sign means you're financing your own heartbreak, brick by brick. Why do men do this? Why do you let yourself be lulled into a false sense of security by the quiet? Because confrontation is scary. Because admitting there's a problem means you have to act, and acting means vulnerability, effort, and maybe even failure. So you settle for the illusion of peace, the calm before the storm. But peace built on denial is a lie, and it's the deadliest kind. You see, the thing about this overlooked warning sign is that it's subtle enough to fool you, but loud enough to destroy everything if left unchecked. It's that small emotional distance that whispers, "I'm not all in anymore," that tells you she's already checked out in places you can't reach. And you sit there, nodding along, pretending it's normal, pretending it's nothing. But wake the hell up. This isn't normal. This isn't nothing. This is the beginning of the end, and ignoring the sign is like handing over the keys to your marriage and walking away. Some guys say, she's just going through something, I'll give her space. Space is fine, hell, sometimes it's necessary, but don't confuse space with silence. Space is an opportunity to reconnect, silence is a retreat. When she starts to retreat emotionally and you don't push back, you're effectively telling her, go ahead, disappear. And she will. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because she feels safe doing so, because you've created an environment where it's easier for her to close off than to open up. Here's a brutal truth, every relationship has its storms, but the ones that break you are the silent ones, the ones you let grow by ignoring the sign. You think the absence of a fight means all is well? No, it means you're losing the battle without a single shot fired. That quiet withdrawal, that emotional shutdown, is the calm before the tsunami, and you're standing on the shore with your eyes closed. You might wonder, how can I even tell if it's the sign or just a bad day? Easy. Patterns don't lie. One bad day is just that, a bad day. But when the bad days pile up, when the conversations feel like chores, when the laughter fades and the smiles don't reach the eyes, that's the sign. You don't get to ignore patterns. That's foolishness. That's being a blind idiot financing your own heartbreak. And let's be clear, this isn't about women being difficult or men being weak. It's about boundaries and respect, yours and hers. Ignoring the sign means you're not respecting your own emotional needs or hers. You're tolerating a slow death of connection because it's easier than addressing the discomfort. But comfort is a lie when it's built on neglect. You don't get to have both comfort and a thriving marriage. You have to choose, and ignoring the sign is choosing comfort at the expense of love. So what's the takeaway here? It's simple but requires guts. Pay attention to the small shit. The quiet withdrawals, the half-hearted responses, the slight distances. Don't be the guy who looks back years later and wonders where it all went wrong. You know where it went wrong. It went wrong the moment you started ignoring the sign. The moment you told yourself, it's nothing, when everything inside screamed, it's something. Wake up. You're in the fight of your life, and the first round is already underway. The overlooked warning sign is your enemy, hidden in plain sight. Don't let it win because you refuse to see it. Because if you keep ignoring the sign, you might as well start packing your bags. The marriage you think you have is already slipping through your fingers, and no amount of wishing will bring it back. You think ignoring the sign is harmless? Think again. That little emotional distance you're brushing off? It's a virus eating away at the core of your relationship, and you're letting it thrive. Trust, intimacy, connection, they're not just fluffy words for couples to throw around. They're the foundation. And every time you ignore the sign, you chip away at that foundation, brick by brick. The impact isn't immediate, not like a slap in the face. It's slow, corrosive, and deadly. You don't notice the erosion until you're staring at a pile of rubble where your marriage used to stand. Here's what happens when you ignore that subtle shift: the dynamic between you two changes. It's like water slowly freezing, inch by inch. You can't see it turn solid, but one day, you realize you're stuck in a block of ice. The conversations dry up. The laughter fades. The touch that used to mean everything becomes awkward or rare. The emotional gap grows until it feels like you're living with a stranger. And yet, you keep telling yourself, it's fine. It'll pass. No, it won't. It never does if you don't face it head on. Why do couples fail to tackle this? Fear. Plain and simple. Fear of conflict, fear of rocking the boat, fear of what might come out if they really dig deep. You'd rather pretend the problem doesn't exist than stir the pot and risk a fight. So you swallow your doubts, bite your tongue, and hope the silence doesn't scream louder than your courage. But silence is a liar. It's not peace, it's the calm before the storm. And that storm will hit harder because you refuse to prepare. It's also about the desire to maintain harmony at all costs, even if that harmony is fake, brittle, and ready to snap. You convince yourself that keeping the peace is more important than addressing the cracks. Better a quiet house than a tense one, you say. But here's the brutal truth: a quiet house with a fractured heart is a prison. You're locking yourself in with a ghost of what used to be, and the key is dangling right in front of you, but you're too afraid to reach for it. What's worse is how those little unresolved issues, those tiny emotional distances, morph into resentment and bitterness. It's like leaving a wound open. It festers. You start carrying grudges over things you barely remember, picking fights over nonsense, or worse, shutting down completely because you're tired of the constant emotional drain. And where does that leave you? Alone. Together but alone. That's the cruelest kind of loneliness, and it's born from ignoring the sign. I've seen it 100 times. Guys coming to me, eyes hollow, wondering how they ended up divorced or separated from the woman they loved. And the answer is always the same: they ignored the sign. They let the emotional distance grow until it was too wide to bridge. They failed to speak up, to challenge the silence, to demand the connection they deserved. And society? It doesn't help. It tells men to be stoic, to man up, to keep their feelings to themselves. So they do. And in that silence, their marriages crumble. Look, this isn't about blaming women or calling out anyone's faults. It's about recognizing the hard facts of relationships. Ignoring the sign is a two-way street, but as the guy, you're often the one expected to lead, to fix, to hold it all together. If you're not paying attention, who will? If you're not willing to face the discomfort of confronting what's happening, who's going to break the cycle? Communication isn't just talking, it's listening, understanding, and being present. When the signs start showing, that's your cue to lean in, not back away. Ask the hard questions. Don't settle for surface answers. Push past the "I'm fine" or "nothing's wrong," because those are the most dangerous words in any relationship. Behind them hides the truth you refuse to see: that emotional gap is growing, and if left unchecked, it will swallow everything. It's also about emotional attentiveness, being tuned into her moods, her silences, her shifts in behavior. You can't just go through the motions and expect the marriage to thrive. You have to be present, really present, and that means noticing the things she doesn't say out loud, the subtle cues that scream louder than words ever could. Ignoring the sign means turning a blind eye to these cues, and that's how trust erodes. Trust isn't just about faithfulness, it's about feeling safe to be vulnerable, to share fears and dreams without judgment. When you ignore the sign, you tell her it's safer to shut down than to open up. And intimacy? It's not just about sex. It's about connection on every level: emotional, intellectual, spiritual. When you ignore the sign, you starve that intimacy. You let it wither until it's a distant memory. You think she's just not in the mood, but really, she's protecting herself from pain, from disappointment, from feeling invisible in her own marriage. You're not just losing physical closeness, you're losing the part of her that trusted you first, the part that believed you had her back no matter what. So why do you keep ignoring the sign? Because facing it means owning up to your role in the problem. It means admitting you haven't been the partner you thought you were. It means stepping into messy conversations, dealing with uncomfortable emotions, and maybe even facing rejection. It's easier to pretend everything's fine, to laugh it off, to distract yourself with work or friends or screens. But easier isn't better. Easier is the path to ruin. You want your marriage to survive? Then don't just see the sign, read it, understand it, and act on it. Don't wait for the emotional gap to become a canyon. Don't let silence become your enemy. You have to break the cycle of fear and denial. You have to be the one who says, no more ignoring. No more pretending. Because the only way to preserve what you have is to fight for it every damn day. Remember, emotional neglect isn't a victimless crime. It hurts her, it hurts you, and it kills the marriage. And the worst part? It's preventable. You're not helpless here. You have the power to change the trajectory, but only if you wake up from the comfortable numbness of ignoring the sign. Only if you stop being the blind idiot financing your own heartbreak. So look around. Look at her eyes, her body language, her silence. Listen to the spaces between her words. That's where the truth lives. And if you care about this marriage, if you want it to survive and thrive, you won't just see the sign, you'll confront it. You'll pull her close instead of pushing her away. You'll start the hard conversations instead of pretending they don't exist. You'll rebuild trust, rebuild intimacy, because ignoring the sign is the fastest way to lose everything. Wake up, brother. The clock is ticking, and the choice is yours. Will you keep ignoring the sign until there's nothing left? Or will you step up, face the discomfort, and fight for the marriage you say you want? The answer isn't easy, but it's clear. The future of your relationship depends on what you do now. You think ignoring the sign is just a harmless gamble? Wake the hell up. It's not a gamble, it's a suicide mission for your marriage. The cost of neglecting that early warning isn't just emotional discomfort or a few awkward dinners. No, it's deeper, darker, and far more devastating. Emotional distance turns into fortress walls, trust crumbles into dust. And before you know it, what you had, the life you built together, starts to unravel. Infidelity, separation, outright heartbreak, they're not just headlines or stories you hear about. They're the real, brutal paychecks men cash when they ignore the sign. Let's not sugarcoat it. I've seen marriages crumble because one or both partners refuse to acknowledge the early cracks. You know the type, the guys who say, "I didn't see it coming." Bullshit. You saw it. You felt it. You ignored it. That's the truth no one wants to admit. There's a story of a guy who told me once, she stopped sharing her day with me. I thought she was just stressed. Months later, she was gone, emotionally and physically. Had he acted on the sign, things might have been different. But ignoring the sign? That was the first nail in the coffin. And it's not just about cheating or walking out the door. It's about the slow death of what you cherish. The nights spent in the same bed but worlds apart. The conversations that feel like interrogations or worse, silent treatments. The hollow feeling of knowing you're losing her, but being too scared or lazy to fight for her. Ignoring the sign doesn't just hurt your marriage, it kills the very bond that made it sacred. Communication and emotional attentiveness aren't just fluffy advice, they're survival tools. You think love is enough? Fuck no. Love is the spark, but communication and attention are the fuel. Without them, that spark dies. You need to talk, really talk. Not just surface-level bullshit about schedules and groceries, but the hard stuff, the hurts, the fears, the needs. When you ignore the sign, you're saying you don't care enough to do that work. You're telling her, "I'm fine with us falling apart." Here's the kicker. Ignoring the sign means you're handing over control of your marriage to fate or worse, to neglect. You're letting silence win. You're letting apathy set in. And the consequences? They're brutal. You lose her trust first, and once trust is gone, everything else follows. Intimacy, respect, partnership, they all break down. And when that happens, infidelity or separation aren't just possibilities, they become inevitable outcomes. I want you to imagine this, a couple sitting across from each other, not speaking. The years of small ignores, the moments of turning away, the unasked questions all boil down to this. They're strangers trapped in a shell of a marriage. The sign was there, flashing in neon, but both chose to look the other way. Now, they're paying the price. The man says, "If only I had listened." Too late, brother. Too late. So what's the lesson here? You don't get a second chance at ignoring the sign. You don't get to say, "I'll fix it tomorrow." Tomorrow becomes next week, next month, next year. And by then, the damage is done. You lose the woman you loved, not to some dramatic betrayal, but to your own complacency, your denial, your refusal to act. This isn't just about saving your marriage, it's about saving yourself. Because when your marriage falls apart, you don't just lose a partner, you lose a part of your soul. You lose the future you dreamed of, the family you wanted, the man you hoped to be. Ignoring the sign is like setting fire to your own house and hoping the smoke won't choke you. It will. And it does. If you want to protect what you have, stop ignoring the sign. Start talking. Start listening. Start fighting for her and for yourself. Don't wait until the emotional distance becomes a canyon you can't cross. Don't wait until the silence becomes deafening. You have the power to change the course, but only if you act now. The clock is ticking, and the price of ignoring the sign is higher than you're willing to pay. You want your marriage to survive? Then pay attention. Don't just see the sign, read it, understand it, and do something about it. Because if you don't, you won't just lose her. You'll lose everything. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.